All right, good evening. It's good to see everyone. Welcome. I'd like to call to order our meeting tonight. This is our East Long Meadow School Committee meeting. It's a regular session meeting. It's October 6, 2014, and it is 7 p.m. As a reminder, this meeting is being both audio and videotaped. And I just ask if anyone else in the audience is recording, just to raise your hand, let us know.
Just good job for the reminder.
Great, thank you very much. Now, if we can all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so if we can do roll call, starting on my left.
Elizabeth Marcin Boucher.
Gregory Thompson.
Rich Fitzgerald.
Deirdre Mayu.
Gordon Smith, Superintendent of Schools.
Bill Fonseca.
Terry Olajars, Assistant Superintendent for Business. Kathy Saletti, Recording Secretary.
Jack Moynihan, Student Representative.
Great. We have the approval of some minutes. We have the September 22nd, 2014 regular session meeting minutes.
I move that we approve the September 22nd, 2014 regular session meeting minutes.
Okay, motion's been made
Second.
and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
And I'll abstain.
Okay, thank you. And that carries forward 4-0. Thank you. We also have some executive session meeting minutes from September 22nd.
I'll move that we approve the September 22nd, 2014 executive session meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, and
And I'll abstain.
thank you. And that carries forward 4-0. Thank you. If you have anything you'd like to start with?
I think I'm good this week, thank you.
I'm good as well, thank you.
I've got three different items. First, I did visit the library, and that Meadowbrook writing project
Yeah.
was kind of neat. I want to, thank Ava, Jack, Lillian, Seamus, Blade, and Brady, Nicholas, and Colin for their work. I learned about fishing, food, and sports.
Mm-hmm.
And to the teachers, congratulations, Ms. Adams, Ms. Hasbrook, Ms. Lorenzo, Ms. Lavin, and Ms. O'Donnell. Second, we had a collaborative meeting, and one change which I think makes sense is that Hall of Fame induction we used to do on convocation, we're going to move that to recognition in June. So instead of, so we're going to induct the Hall of Fame members. That makes more sense.
Yes.
The recognition
Yeah.
seems more appropriate for that.
Okay.
And the last thing is, this class of 2015 has really distinguished itself. Tom Cronin, a senior, before the football game that Bill and I attended, had a pre-game ceremony for 6 families affected by cancer. It's kind of when it's Breast Cancer Week. It was just so touching. The family came out with different football players, and they were honored. It was just very touching, and then to have the football team win wonderfully. So it was a great night. But then to Tom Cronin, I mentioned Jack Dalton last time, and Tia Kennedy and Julia Wood. This class of 2015 really has distinguished itself very early in the school year. So, yeah, that was me.
Oh, that was great. Thank you. Mr. Fonseca?
Okay, to echo Rich's comments, the whole football night was great. I mean, it was a really touching ceremony prior to the game, recognizing cancer and the effects it has on families. And again, it was a good win over Hoyoke. It was a very convincing win. It was a good night. Also, the LPVEC Student of the Month for September were given out, and in Automotive Technology 2, Thomas Keat from our district here in East Long Meadow received that award. That's all I have.
Great. And Jack Moynihan, if you have anything?
I'm good.
Nothing's going on at the high school?
Exactly.
Okay.
Isn't this week some kind of Spirit Week?
Oh, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's Spirit Week this week. Yeah, exactly. So that's a big one, I guess.
We
get into it.
It's only Monday. We get it.
It's early, exactly.
Any details on the Spirit Week?
I mean, I have something planned pretty good for tomorrow, but tomorrow's Tropical Tuesday, so we'll see.
Tropical Tuesday.
So we'll see what's
I
going
hear
on.
don't go to the party stores for anything tropical, they've sold
out.
Sold out, exactly.
Sure.
Exactly. I did hear that some of the administrators may be shaving their heads on Friday. Is that true? That the principal or assistant principal may be shaving? Is that a rumor?
Not happening.
No, it's not happening.
I think that's only if one of the school committee members and superintendent also shave their
I
heads.
hear Dresser said it would not roll back.
So you can tell us more about the next time.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Very
Sounds good.
good.
I'll take notes and notes and give it back to you.
All right, moving on, this is usually the time for visitors to address the committee. So if there's anyone here who'd like to address the committee, this would be the time you would do it. And so seeing none, we're going to move on to the next part, which is our presentations, our MCAS presentation by the leadership team. So if we could just
Leadership
welcome
team
you
is
guys up
here,
to
and
the
we'll
table.
welcome them up. As they're getting settled, I will bring your attention to the 3 new TVs. This is, why doesn't everybody
Yep.
join? Just, you can wheel a seat in as close as possible.
Don't be shy.
Mr. Page and Mr. Marhefka, just loading. I didn't even see Mr. Mark back there. Sorry, Mr. Mark.
Who's hiding?
We, while people are getting situated, our projector that's mounted on the ceiling and then always caused us to have to turn out the lights and move is starting to wane on us. We started to price out newer projectors, and they're anywhere from the 1,500 range to over 2,000. We were able to purchase these TVs for roughly $400 a TV, get them mounted and connect them wirelessly to our computers. And I believe we now have a better feed because LCAT, Mr. Mackey, can connect right into, no, Mr. Mackey?
No?
We're working.
Yes.
Okay. The theory, they just went up last week, so the theory is that Mr. Mackey also would be able to get a feed, so now the presentations will go directly into their filming as opposed to them filming the presentation that used to take place on the wall. So we're hoping that this is a better way of presenting, and then anyone who's watching us on LCAT will also have a clearer vision of the presentation. So I think we have everybody here. So what we are going to do tonight is go through our MCAS results, our achievement results, and I believe Ms. Lanier is going to, very nice, and there it is. If you take a look at one of the TVs that is best for your viewing, from your viewing vantage point, we're going to take a look at what the Progress and Performance Index is, that's PPI, and how we can use it as a district, how it's determined, and then how we can use it as a district. We're going to take a look across the district, how we're doing. We're also going to take a look at how we're doing compared to the state, because MCAS, as we've discussed the last few meetings, is shifting, and ultimately the whole assessment system may be shifting. And so how are we doing with that shift in standards, and how are we doing comparatively to the state? But then one thing that we have done quite a lot of, you saw a lot of new graphs this year in your packets, and you'll see them tonight, is we've been concentrating on a focus area of open response. How are students doing with open response questions in obviously ELA, but also math and science? And so we take a deeper look at that and then look at next steps for the district. So that's what we're going to be looking at this evening. And we'll start up with Progress Performance Index. So in your packets, I did give a guide which hopefully was helpful. It came from DESE in terms of what the Progress and Performance Index is comprised of. But basically, it's looking at, obviously, the English Language Arts assessment, the math assessment, and the science assessment. And it's specifically looking at how we are doing at narrowing the proficiency gaps. Not only how our aggregate students, all of our students doing, but then how are we doing in the high needs group? How are we doing in our subgroups of special education, low income, and it goes through the subgroups. And in this performance index, basically what you get each year is you're awarded points in these different areas. If you are on target, meaning you're hitting the state set targets, you get 75 points. If you are improving, but you're below target, you get 50 points. And so not to be confused with what we may all have been used to in terms of taking tests, a 50 is not necessarily a bad thing because it means you're improving, you're just below the state set target. 75 is on target, 100 it means you're going above target. 25 points basically for no change, and then if you have a decline, which is over 0.25 points, then you would get no points in the PPI index, just to give you an idea of what that looks like. For elementary and middle schools, you're looking at 5 indicators in narrowing the proficiency gap. And that's coming through, as I said, the ELA, the math, and the science, and then as well as the growth, the student growth percentile. How are students doing in those subject areas and in their cohorts across the state, right? How they score, and students who have scored similarly in the cohort across the state, that becomes the group with which they get compared for the next cycle in terms of their growth. High school is a little bit different. You have the same 5 indicators, but then you also add graduation rate, which is very high here, and we're excited about that. We earn a lot of points for our graduation rate in this index, and dropout rate. And at the moment, our dropout rate, I believe, is 0.3%, so we also earn points in the index for that. So high schools are looked at similarly with 5 indicators, and they add graduation and dropout rate. Taking a look at ours, we figured we would take you actually to a little bit of an in-depth look as what you can see on the state portal, but I think you may have to scroll over. Yep. Just to give you an idea, would you be able to get it so that you can see? If you go to the accountability section of, or the district profiles, you're able to pull this up, and it gives you an idea of how we've done. The full chart looks like this, or what you're seeing on the screen, how we've done over the course of roughly 4 years, because they started this process and this index in 2011. That was your base year. And so this past year, 2014, the spring of 2014, we actually, if you were to look at our annual cumulative PPI, we did quite well compared to where we were last year. We ended up with a 68, and that's at the bottom there, the second to last bold number. Contributing to that, you had things such as making improvement in ELA at the aggregate level. You had science actually was a big contributor across many grade levels. We were hitting our target in science. And as I said earlier, annual dropout rate and cohort graduation rate, which are, I believe, at the bottom of the detailed view. You may not have it in there. We earned high points there. And so that contributes to not only your annual, but then it gets put into the formula, and each year is weighted from 2011 going out, and then they come up with a cumulative PPI for your district. The goal, obviously, is to continue to reduce the proficiency gap and hit your target. They've set a target for us for 2017, and actually in all school systems. I don't know if people have questions on any of that. Years past, I don't know that we've taken you to this, and we figured this might give you an idea
Why is it
of
not
how the
student
ranking.
growth in science?
The state doesn't assign student growth
In
for
science.
science, it's just an ELA and math.
Okay. So, going off of that chart, just some quick hitting positive impacts, some of which we already said. You know, we narrowed the proficiency gap for all students in science. That was a big contributor in our PPI this year. We also narrowed proficiency gaps in both the high needs and low income subgroups for ELA. We had an increase in low income students meeting their student growth percentile target in ELA, and we had our high needs students improve on their scores, but they were just below their CPI target in ELA. And as you go through the graphs and we get more in depth with this, you're going to see how all of these things started to add to our progress performance index, and the work we've been doing over the last 3 years is really starting to pay off. Some of the negative impacts on PPI is that we're still seeing that math is an area that needs to be focused on, and that's really across a few grade levels across it. If you look just at our aggregate, we had no real change in the aggregate score. We obviously go a little bit deeper and start to look at it across grade levels and start to look even more specifically, and this is where I think originally all of this assessment system was focused on, which is how are we doing in terms of implementing curriculum, and how are we doing in having our students understand the curriculum. And so we start to break down and look at the actual standards and see where students are struggling with those standards. So the other area was that we did see in some grade levels an increase of students in the warning failing category in both math and ELA. And those are areas where we have concern and we'll put heightened focus.
It's an increase in the number of students?
In the warning and failing category at some grade levels.
Was it any one specific aggregate group, or was it just across in general?
Well, actually, we're going to start to get into
Okay.
where that happened.
Okay.
So, give you an idea of, we talked a little bit about the targets, and so up on screen you have what our target was. CPI is Composite Performance Index, so it's the actual target, and then your actual how you did on the ELA, the math, or the science test. So you see 2014 is the first column in terms of how we did. Then you see where we're going in 2015. The state's already set the target for us, and then where we need to be by 2017. So you see how we performed in that first column, and this is all students, so it's the district, and then the bottom category is high needs, and that's a combination of a number of subgroups.
The all students, do we have a chance or an opportunity to reach the 2015 target, especially in math? We're close to 7 points away from that target.
One of the things that does not change, if you have had no change,
I understand
your
that.
target doesn't change.
Right, so I mean, so the chances of us reaching that target in 2015 are what?
I think there's a chance that we're going to continue to improve, and we feel that maybe the principals can speak more specifically for their buildings, but I think we will continue to see improvement, and I think that we've already started to dig into the data so that we're very aware of where our struggles are and on what particular standards, as well as what particular grade levels.
So is the great state of Massachusetts, because the district, has chosen to do the park exam, going to explain to us how we take these targets and goals and figure out what happens on the park, which the kids are going to be
Is the great state of Massachusetts going to do that?
How are they going to help
Yes.
us figure out
Yeah.
how to make this
Absolutely.
make sense for our children?
Right, because what they have presented is that they will not only have a crosswalk so that you still have the same type of accountability, but they will also break out the results in a very similar way that we're used to seeing the MCAS results broken out.
We'll see.
Was that passion, Beth?
There you go. All good.
This is a little bit more broken out chart on CPI comparisons, and I don't know, Mr. Neer, if you want to walk us through some of this. But as you look, it gives you an idea of what the actual DESI rating is all the way to the right. It's a lot on the screen, we realize that. We're hoping that the LCAT viewers actually get a clearer look at that with the feed, but we'll also put this up on our webpage once we're finished with the presentation tonight so that people can look at that.
It's just a further breakdown from your district numbers, and what's important is just the target ratings, and to know that on target, you were asking before, are we going to meet the 2015 target, that we're going to push hard towards it, because our students need to be getting better in their math proficiency, and so that's what we're going to work on. But to be on target, you can be plus or minus 1.25 points, CPI points. So you have a little bit of leeway there, which is helpful. And same with no change. You still have a little bit of leeway. There's like a 2-point differential where they consider up or down as being, or down as being no change. So
You only decline if you've gone down 2.5 or more.
this is just more into the accountability piece. I think there's more value in looking on how our students did with % correct on the types of questions that they were asked, and then also in our percentages of proficient and advanced. They give you more information than this does.
We have the schools listed there. Nowhere in this presentation do I hear what level we're at each school. What level are we at in high school?
1.
Level 1.
Personal Park?
We're level 2 in every other school, and we're level 2 as a district. Because as a district, if you have a level 2 school, then you're a level 2 district.
So our level has not changed from the last 2 years?
Levels haven't changed. We've been level 1 at the high school for the last 3 years, I believe, and we've been level 2 in our other schools for the last 3 years.
Can I just add, Rich, you asked that question about trying to make that target by the goal set. And I think what's really important to note, as collectively as a district, we're kind of in a transition in terms of mathematics right now. As you all know, with the adoption of the Common Core standards, we've really had to revamp the math curriculum, and that's not just at the high school level, it's K through 12. And I think we're doing a lot of work in that area. So our hope is that once that's aligned and our curriculum is reflective of what needs to get done with the help of the common assessments that we're doing, I think we have a really good chance.
For this,
And actually,
the conference in May, so we think in 6 or 7 months we're going to be able to do that.
Right, and as Valerie alluded to, each one of us has taken apart our student results based on the standards that they did great and the standards that they need improvement. And currently, our math department is trying to come up with some strategies to kind of hit those areas of need more specifically, and that's going to be reflected in the common assessments that our teachers are developing. So, you know, you hear a lot about these common assessments and what's their purpose. One purpose is so that we can be more laser-like in terms of what we can focus on in preparation, not just for the MCAS, but just overall in math.
The common assessment work, which is something we've been doing over the last few years, actually then drives further our alignment to the standards. And it gives colleagues a chance to discuss those standards and identify the priority standards.
Now, I know we have ELA coaches throughout the system, am I correct?
We do.
K through 8? High school, we don't have any coaches.
Yeah.
So what about math coaches?
That, if you remember last year, it's a good question. Last year at budget development time, prior to the change that appropriations had asked for, one of our requests was to establish a math academic coach at the elementary level.
So we have none K through 5? I know we have one at Personal Park.
We have one in Birchland. We don't have math coaches 3 through 5 or K through 2, pre-K.
All right, thank you.
So one of the things that we did with this presentation, the last few years, we've taken a lot of, put in a lot of effort in focusing in on how are our students doing on open response questions. Because 3 years ago, when we started to break down the data, we realized that in many cases, we had a high percentage of students who were not even engaging the open response questions. We had too many zeros for not engaging, and in some cases, for not connecting. As grading has become more stringent, you actually can write some information down, start to respond, but if it has no connection to the actual question, you may not earn any points. So one of the things we did is we started to take a deeper look at how have we done compared to the state with this focus on open response scores. And so the graphs you're going to see as we go through and people can start to speak to them, you see how we're doing. We think the work actually is yielding quite a positive result.
I'm just going to talk through how to read the slide. It is labeled, but just so that we're always going to be in the red. The LPS is on the red, the state is in the blue.
Be Spartan red, Mr. Fred?
We may have changed it for one of the slides. So this is just an open response, grades 3 through 5. And again, the reason we took a look at, we were focusing on open response was exactly what Mr. Smith said, which was that our students weren't engaging at a level that they could get high percentages correct in those questions. And knowing we're transitioning into new standards, the Common Core requires you to be much more critical thinker, be able to generate responses, to be able to analyze what you're reading, and the open response is a window into that, just like a entry step, if you will. So the key or the axis is the percent correct on the y-axis, and then you have the grade levels across the x-axis on the bottom. While we were doing open response, you will see a few other abbreviations there. For ELA, you'll see writing prompt or WP for writing prompt, because again, that is a similar level of constructed response, even more so. So we wanted to show you how we're doing in that as well. And then the plus or negatives on the top are percentage points. Important to know, that's our percentage point difference between the state average and then the district's average.
Mrs. Minio, I'm confused by percent correct. Open response, I thought it was graded 1, 2, 3, 4.
It is, but then you have on any given test a certain number of open response questions, and so they give a percentage of how the percentage correct between the total points you could have gotten on open response. So if I had, if I had 6 of them, I had 16, right. How many, and then you figure out how many points out of the total did they get, and they convert it into a percentage correct.
So if you had 6 questions, they're worth 4 points max, is 24, so out of 24, 60%
Right.
is where we hit 55%.
Right.
So 50% on grade 3 represents what then?
In grade 4.
We answered average of 2 out of 4 on all of the questions.
Right.
And we did 1%
And the state
better
did
than
the
the
same.
state.
1
Right.
percentage point.
State was
1
actually
percentage
answering-
point better than the state, correct.
Which is,
Why are we using
No.
the state? Why don't we use KFC? Why don't we use some communities that are like us that the state gives us? Why are we using the state? Why don't we use like the communities that are like us?
The DART.
I mean, the DART actually has-
We could, but the DART profiles are
comparison hasn't
updated
been
with this
updated
year's data, and the state compares us to how the state's doing overall as well.
Right. This is actually
But-
how the state reports the data to us.
I understand, but, okay.
What we can do, and we have done at the mid-year look, is we can pull in the DART comparison, and now you can start to look at how other like districts are scoring and how we're scoring.
do we know what the range was for all districts?
Range in terms of...
Just in the average, they don't have the DART. The DART has not been updated, so we don't have what we're
Range.
comparable
Right.
with the other districts just yet.
Okay, we just have averages, not range.
Updated after they do like an October data collection, so they usually update it after that because they need to make sure that you're comparable with your student population, your staffing population. There's a bunch of different things that go into your comparability.
Yeah.
So that collection window is between October 1st and October 28th, and then usually in November you get the updated DART results.
So it can change who they compare us to?
Yeah, it does, and it has.
Oh.
Well, if your demographics change,
Yeah.
if your student population changes, just an overall number, then that would change your who you're compared to.
I always found it quite surprising when they compared us to like Foxborough and
Right.
Wales.
Right.
Right.
Oh my
Right.
God.
Right.
Yeah.
Much-
Can we choose who we don't like? If we
No,
wanted to
no,
see-
no.
No,
that's
So we
great.
can't say we'd like to
No.
If you
compare
go
us
to- if-
to,
yes,
like,
if you go to the chart-
LPC districts.
Right.
Right, just say
You
our
can
local
definitely
ones.
should be looking at
That's,
LPVC.
right,
districts, too.
right, our
Should be.
local ones.
You can.
Yeah.
You can't choose whom they
Right.
give you as their
No, no,
set.
I understand
But
that. I'm
if
saying,
you
but
We can do our
we
own.
wanted to see a
Right,
comparison.
if you
Yes.
go to the actual
Okay.
state site, you can pick other districts, you can add other
Because we
districts.
tend to use LPVC for other statistics when we
exactly.
make decisions as we
Right.
did tonight on one of the items here.
Yeah.
Right.
We should be looking at that also.
Yeah.
And we're
But that's what
usually
parents
have
are looking at too, just the
Yeah.
local community saying,
Right.
well, my friend lives in this town
Yeah.
and blah, blah, blah.
We usually have at least one district. Hampton-Wilbraham is most like us out of the LPVC
Right.
as far as demographics, population. So that's usually in our DART cohort. The other districts last year were not. There wasn't another one in there. And it's just the size of some of the LPVC districts.
Right.
Student makeup.
Right, yeah.
And it changes
Diversity.
by level too,
And
right?
it-
So like the high school DART might be different than the elementary DART comparisons, depending on the numbers.
Right.
Yep. So this shows you the 3 to 5 open response compared to the state, and you can see we'll talk through at the end. You'll see some of our where we're having difficulties and where we feel we're having strengths. And grade 3 math would be one of the areas that we would need to take a look at and concentrate on in math. And that's not just grade 3. I know that Meadowbrook, under Lisa with Mrs. Dakin, asks for the scores for 3rd grade and goes through the standards comparison so that the K-2 staff can take a look and drill down into what the instructional needs are of our students too. So we really try to take a comprehensive look so that we're building the curriculum appropriately.
At first view, that graph could look negative, but actually that
Right.
graph is more powerful than the graph before it. because graph before it shows around the 50 percentile, as Greg said. This one's got close to 70% on the 3rd and 5th grade, over 70% of the 8th and the 5th grade. And what is that, close to over 50% in the 4th grade. So this graph, on the first look, at well,
But the state scores that. though.
I understand that.
Relative to the state.
Right.
But you're also, not only is the state achieving more, which I think you're saying, Mr. Pajero, but also as our students go through grades 3 through 5, they're answering a higher percentage correctly.
Say that again?
Yeah.
If you look at our students in the red bars, as they go through grades 3 through 5, they're answering a higher percentage correctly.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Fourth grade, but it's across.
We did
But it's
have a
across.
test, yeah. So this is 6 through 8, ELA, open response. You can see that there you have, actually, you're above the state in all the different grade levels. And 6 through 8 math.
So they give each district this target CPI, correct?
Correct.
Do they give the state a target CPI? Because can you average CPI and then just...
I don't think I've ever seen an average
Because
CPI
of
now,
the-
because
Yeah,
it's
I
the
don't
state
know.
accountability, but
Varies
they're held.
from school to school.
Like, so we're on a step,
district.
like we're taking 5 steps, is it 5 years? Do they
So
set it out?
basically, if you remember,
Yeah,
the original NCLB was by 2014, everyone was going to be at
Yeah, that
100%
graph, right,
proficiency.
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't coming to fruition, and so they're a little more gentle this time, where you have to cut that
Right.
proficiency
Right.
gap in half. And so that's why those numbers don't change over time. The state does have overall how they've done. They have a state report they put out on what they've seen in
Right.
the MCAS annually, and then they also take a look at a 7-year trend for the state. They have to report to the Department of Ed at the federal level, but they don't. You can't go onto the site and find an overall state.
Okay.
And for PPI, 2011 was the baseline, it's a 6-year.
Right.
6 years.
6-year,
Right.
in 2011, no
Half
one knew.
every-
No one knew
half
that it was
every year.
baseline year. Yeah.
Right.
So over 6 years, you have to cut your gap in half.
Right.
Right.
And the targets are.
They're all
the
set
6
already.
steps.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes,
Yeah.
based on your 2011 data.
And our steps could be bigger or smaller than other districts depending on where they started in 2011.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, wherever you scored in 2011.
If they're smaller,
Set-
you're doing better, so it's sometimes harder to take that smaller
Right,
jump than
right,
other.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
And that's kind of why I asked it though, because if we're comparing ourselves with the state, how fast is the state moving, I guess is my point.
Right.
How big are the state steps? So I know we're right smack in the middle, right? So it makes sense that we're right about where the state is. But if we're taking smaller steps, will the state then increase faster than we will?
But this is
Because
just
it's
how we're
including all
scoring
districts.
overall on
This is
OR.
just
an open
This
response.
isn't
Yeah.
just steps.
Yeah, this is,
Okay.
Right.
this is now, yeah.
This is taking a greater focus on the work we've been doing in district, knowing that that was an area that our students were struggling on.
Okay.
When you say math open response, does that include short answers too?
This is just
Just a plain
open
open response, not the
response.
short
You would
answer.
see essay if it was a short answer.
For ours, there's 4 of them on each test.
So give us an example of what would an open response question be, just.
It'd be like a
Kind of,
3 or
sort of.
4 part question where they'd probably have to create a table or do a graph, and then, part A and part B would be lower order questions most likely, and then part C and D would be higher order questions. There'd definitely be some explanation required of mathematical thinking, which is Common Core and what we're all so focused on, especially on the part C and D. But it's definitely a multi-step problem. It's definitely a problem where if you make a goof in A,
Right. It follows
It
through.
follows.
you can be hurting all the way through.
And you need to communicate how you've gotten the answer, you need to connect it all. What we were seeing 3 years ago was that we had very few students who would actually take it on.
So they wouldn't even attempt
They
to.
wouldn't even
go
attempt.
there,
yeah. Really?
It was a much higher
So they
percentage.
took the loss.
One of the categories, if you dig deep into these reports, is you can look at how many blanks or zeros did your students have compared again to the state on these type of questions. 3 years ago, it was significantly higher than what we're seeing now.
Because as a parent, I know you guys have been driving this in. I remember my son coming home from school in first grade going, well, I know there's 5 apples on the tree and 2 fell off, and 3 are left over because I'm not stupid, and that is the answer to do on stage. Didn't do well. But, you know, so I know you guys have been driving this in, and it just surprises me that.
Well,
I know
even
8th grade's a tough kind of.
Well, even our 8th grade went up.
They did,
It just,
yeah.
this is it versus the state.
Yes.
So we
Right.
still celebrated an improvement at Birchland,
Right.
but we got some catching up left. to do.
3 years ago, we were still further below the state.
Yeah.
So it's
So we went up in all 3 of these, and the 7th grade went up when it went up 6% at Birchland. So, you know, this is versus the state, but versus ourselves, it
Right.
was improvement in all 3.
And that's just as important too, because so you're finding that if you focus on the open response, it's giving them more points, or at least it's increasing.
Well, it's the type of thinking we wanted them to concentrate on
It's
more
deeper.
than just how many points. It's because this is the thinking that the Common Core requires you to do on a regular basis now, and not just once in a while or on a couple of questions. You know, and as far as with the math, it's more about knowing the math behind the answer and not just knowing the trick to get the answer.
Right.
So that's why the questions look a lot more involved, and they're asking you to describe your thinking, what was your process, so that they can see, are the students truly learning the math behind it?
Now, is that some of these, the newer tests that may come out, I don't want to use PARCC because it may not be PARCC, but that's what you may see, is that they're going to have more than 6 open response questions that they may.
And their multiple choice require the level of thinking that MCAS open response require. So it's a much deeper
Say that again,
process.
Dr. Allen?
The PARCC samples we have, their multiple choice are much more rigorous than the multiple choice we're used to. So, you know, working with our teachers, we've said, let's focus on this deep kind of instruction, because eventually this is going to be the only kind of instruction, you know. So I think the multiple choice, I think across the district, we're kind of in the mode with ORQs, and we have room to grow, obviously, but we're ingrained in it. And the big change now is going to be the multiple choice and how much deeper that needs to get answers.
Thank you.
This gives you grade 5 and 8, science, technology, and engineering. And then this is grade 10, ELA and math, open response, and you also have, I think Mr. Fertiero, you asked about short answer and writing prompt. You can also see that the percentages, I think you were talking about in terms of just achievement overall, have gone up. So as our students continue through the grade levels, which is something we've seen in previous years' presentations, they are answering a higher percentage correct. Certainly we're looking to see that plus where we continue to improve and go above the state. But as Dr. Allen just said, in some areas, we had significant improvement, and we still may be below the state in that one area.
What's science and technology for grade 10?
Science and technology is actually, for the most part, for our students, biology, and it's actually reported. I'm sure Dr. Flanagan can answer this more specifically, but it's not reported
There's no
because we're a block schedule, and
that's right,
they take it twice.
Right.
They actually only report our winter scores, so it's not a true representation.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we don't, our scores that
I
report
remember
are like a year and a half
Yeah, it doesn't
behind.
make sense.
Doesn't make any
Thank you,
sense.
Dr. Flanagan.
The next couple of slides are how we're doing with our percentage of students who are proficient and advanced. And then the next slide, you'll see where are we with the students who are struggling at the warning failing level comparatively to the state. So you can see our percentages still for ELA and science and math are there. You can see the difference between the state and where we are, and then some significant improvements or significant gains in ELA and science comparatively to the state.
So when we were talking about the PPI index, this is now your proficient or advanced percentages. We're still seeing some significant gains, obviously in ELA and science, which we have not seen in recent presentations. However, math continues to be an area that we need to focus on.
And you can see we're on par with the state, but just, you know, the state as well has some work to do in math instruction. So it's not just it's kind of a universal theme that you're seeing here. But we're on par with the state, but again, we don't think that's good enough. We should be above, considering you see the percentage there. But again, it's going to take time. You've had some comments from the team around what that math instruction looks like and what the work is that the staff is digging into right now to kind of build the curriculum. Particularly with math and the Common Core, it's one of the major shifts is being able to have a vertically aligned curriculum, if you will. And if we don't have that, we're going to see these gaps. And so it takes time to kind of build that out so that you can start working to fill those gaps. And the state's seeing it too.
And actually, along those lines, one of the things you'll see in our goals as we present those at a future meeting, we've taken our learning walks and we're now embedding it in the building and including teachers on those learning walks, but you'll also see learning walks that go between buildings. So the Birchland Math Department may come over and do a learning walk of the high school math department and vice versa, so they can start to see what's going on in 8th grade math teachers and see what's going on in a 9th grade math class and how that's working. And so we have good comprehension of this across the district.
Question, and picking up on Dr. Allen's theme. In the past, we've broken this down by schools too, so this is all we're going to get today, state district comparison. Dr. Allen made the point that if you looked at our scores last year to this year, we've improved. How do we know what Maple Shade to the high school has done in this area? We don't.
Actually, in strengths and challenges, you will start to see that, but certainly each of the principals can speak to that.
They're going to have to, because if you're going to do your SMART goals, I mean, the high school SMART goals may be different than
and they will be.
Yes.
Right.
But we have no idea how to base that because we don't have the statistics in front of us right now. It's not a criticism. It's just I
don't know if the schools want to speak a little bit to proficient and advanced. What you're seeing is an aggregate look.
I don't think they have to right now.
Each of the schools has looked at, obviously, their own data.
Yeah, I'm sure of that, but that's not part of the presentation. That may be something that we see when they do the goals, but we're going to need some statistics as a school committee.
Right.
So when they give us their goals, which are going to be different for each building,
right,
why statistically they're doing what their goal is.
And generally what you'll see in the goals, specifically in the benchmarks, will be the CPI targets, as well as targets each year, the last few years you've seen from our elementary schools, specifically targets for the STAR reading and STAR math. And that's something that we want not only the school and the school committee to be aware of, we want our teachers to have those numbers as something that they're always having in their minds.
Yeah, I'd like to ask each principal that question about how they did advanced and proficient, but having been on that side, I know how awful that question would be because this is the presentation. So this is what they've worked on. So that's a question for a later time.
Okay. And now this is a look at warning and failing, and one of the things we did include in your packet was just the notes at the bottom. This is an area where obviously you want to see the negative. You want to see the red bar below the state, and we are seeing that in ELA and math and science, technology, and engineering. So to give you some of what you're talking about, Mr. Fitzgerald, as you start to pull out sort of specific strengths, we're 9 percentage points above the state in ELA, and we're 8 percentage points above the state in science, technology, and engineering. In terms of our percent warning and failing, we're seeing that we're 4 percentage points below the state in ELA, 5 percentage points below the state in math. And actually, you saw on some of those graphs that math is an area where the state's also starting to level off. Doesn't mean that we're going to decrease our focus, we're actually going to increase our focus. I think the state summary results talked about a nominal improvement. Was that the word?
Yeah,
overall marginal
there's
improvement?
17 MCAS across the state, right? 17 different assessments that are given, and they had nominal improvement on only 6 of the 17. anything that is over, say, they talked about significant being, or not significant, really 5 percentage points and better is a good significance. But anything greater than 2 percentage points plus or minus was only in a couple areas. One of those being 8th grade math, where the state overall fell 3 percentage points from the previous year, which alludes to what Dr. Allen was saying, where 8th grade we outperformed the state in that, because in that respect, we didn't decrease overall. And then they had a 3-point, they also had a 3-point change in 8th grade science. But everything else was minimal, just really.
The state did, or?
Are the scores maybe, I think, a little bit lower than maybe like any school district would want, just because is the state messing around with the questions, going into the Common Core, playing games with how the questions are done now than they might have been done 3 or 4 years ago? Is this part of where as we're trying to teach the kids one way of doing things, but now we've got a new way of doing it? Does that all kind of?
Well, test questions on the MCAS are
changing,
piloted.
Evolving, I guess?
They have to have been tested, field tested for 2 years before they become an actual item. We don't know what the field tested items are, and usually if you go through an item analysis, it'll tell you things like, this question isn't released to the public, and I make the assumption that that might be because it's being field tested.
Yeah, you've seen on the kids.
So you don't know which ones, and those don't count against you if they're being field tested. They have to be considered an actual question before it counts towards you. So I don't think the state, quote unquote, is playing around with the questions. However, we are implementing the Common Core. This past year, when we took the assessment, the previous year it was this crosswalk between old and new. Whatever was common was tested. This past year, it was 100% Common Core standards that were assessed. So
5 years ago, or like 3 years ago, when they were putting questions
we have
into
new
the
standards.
MCAS, they were anticipating the Common Core coming in.
Well, the Common Core's been here since 2011, and so they've been field testing questions since then.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, since 1998, as they started to gear up, when 2003 was when the graduation requirement came in, they've been field testing. What we're experiencing with Park is not dissimilar to what we've experienced with MCAS.
No, I know that they always do questions every year. You can see even if your kids get it wrong, they say it was a field test question, that kind. So I understood that. I just didn't know if they were, how they're changing those questions, and if that's reflective of a lot of things too. Because as teachers, they're trying to teach kind of almost 2 different ways, and I respect that as being a little bit difficult.
Yeah, so it's still going to be difficult, but at least we're not balancing between, because you're right, the teachers do have this struggle where they'll say, I know we have to concentrate on these, but these standards are still being addressed. So now we're fully implementing the Common Core, and we can really sink our teeth into what does this mean for question types, what does this mean for how we engage our students with the standards, and this particular MCAS and the item analysis gives us a picture into how are they doing with Common Core fully.
So then, further looking at some of the district strengths that came out of our analysis, we have, we're above or on par with the state in all grade levels in ELA. We're 5 percentage points above the state in grade 5 ELA, 8 percentage points above the state in grade 5 math, 5 percentage points above the state in grade 10 math short answer. So the focus on our work with open response and looking at those multi-part problems is starting to yield good results. Grade level gains between school year 13 and school year 14, we saw a 12 percentage point increase in advanced in grade 5 math. That's a pretty significant increase. We had 10 percentage point increase in advanced in grade 6 math. We reduced warning and failing in grade 8 math by 4 percentage points. We reduced warning and failing in grade 6 ELA by 4 percentage points, and we had 0%, which I think is a first at the high school level for grade 10 ELA. I think we had hovered in on 1% for a decent amount of time, and now it says 0%.
And to answer Mr. Vachero's question, we're at 98% advanced proficient in ELA at my school this year.
Which makes their CPI very challenging.
Right.
Yeah.
When you say advanced, I think the state counts advanced and proficient the same.
They break
So
it out,
I-
they
I-
actually break out the categories,
Okay, so-
advanced and proficient, but when they talk about proficiency,
Yeah.
they're combining both of those.
Okay, so when you say advanced, you're not...
I'm actually talking about the category of
advanced,
advanced.
you
And
know.
the reason being is because it goes back to that performance, progress performance index, because you're earning those 50, 75, 100 points based on, are you able to increase your students in the advanced level and decrease your students at the warning and failing level?
Okay, so in the past, they used to count advanced and proficient.
They still do.
Same.
Well,
They
they
used to
don't.
get 50, 100 points when they
Yeah,
got
it says
advanced.
advanced proficient on the.
Yeah.
In CPI, yes.
Yes, that's what
Yes,
I-
I'm sorry, okay. And
Oh,
when they
this is
set your
different.
composite performance index for a
Yeah.
given individual
Yeah.
test, yes.
Okay, thank you.
When they calculate the progress performance index, the PPI,
Yeah.
they look at the advanced, are you increasing your, by hopefully 10% or more, which is a pretty significant increase, and are you decreasing your warning failing? So we've started to take a look at, how are we doing there? Are we moving students into the advanced category out of the warning failing on the other
The
end?
state must have a lot of, what do they call it, cycle attrition? Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
That's what they are called, yeah.
Jeez, I mean, my God.
More than we have.
Yeah, more than we have.
That doesn't mean we're not without challenges, obviously, as you saw just in those graphs. So just to pull out some of the challenges, in math, specifically at grade 3, you saw both math and ELA that we're struggling and we have some challenges there. We had a 5 percentage point increase in the warning and failing third grade math. We had, in the 4th grade, we had a 4 percentage point increase in warning and failing. On the other side, and this is interesting to see, you actually have movement in both directions, because we increased in 4th grade math up to 55% advanced and proficient from where we were the year before. So it's interesting, in grade 4, you're seeing movement away from the middle. Yeah. And in grade 7, we had 4 percentage point increase in warning and failing. And I think there, though, you also had increase in your advanced and proficient in grade 7, if I'm correct. So you're seeing an interesting movement in those grade levels where yes, you're seeing some in the warning and failing, but you're also moving some of your students to advanced.
Right.
And then in ELA, 4th grade, we had a 5 percentage point increase in warning and failing, and yet we also saw, so 4th grade seems to be where we're seeing this, we also saw that we went in advanced and proficient from 61% to 66%. So again, you have students moving from the middle, some towards advanced, some towards warning and failing, where we'd rather see that move all the way towards proficient and advanced, right? And then
It's
3rd grade, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, it's probably important to realize the context of this slide when we talk about challenges is in respect to our district accountability with the state.
Right.
So these challenges are what affected our PPI directly. And that's the context behind these being shown as our challenges. So where did we lose points in our overall performance index? So that's all. 'Cause
I was reading the narrative, and this sentence jumped off the page. Current implementation of our main curricular resource for math indicates a need to make a change. I'll put that in very simple terms. You're saying that what we're doing has to change?
No, well,
That's
it
what it
goes in
says.
context with the sentence ahead of it, which is that some of the
Common core
steps
state
that we're
standards.
taking a look at as a district would be, we have a curriculum renewal cycle in place, and math and the Common Core, I mentioned before, one of the shifts is this tightly aligned vertical curriculum, and we are getting a lot of feedback from teachers and in data that suggests that we may want to take a look at what we're using or how we're implementing math instruction, particularly like the K-8 or K-5 area. So that's where that for possibly making a change. And what that means is maybe we take a look at when we slated math K-5, because we did do the 8 through 12 last year, just the core. But we didn't do that with our math K to 5. And part of that is you have a chunk of money, and we wouldn't have been able to spread that. It would have been much too thin, and it wouldn't have done anyone any benefit. But we need to take a look at where K to 5 math curriculum is in the renewal cycle and possibly make a change. That's what that
sounds. Is it me? It just sounds scary to me. Is it?
It is scary.
Yeah.
We're sitting here. We saw the points. It was 81.8, and our target's 88.2 or something.
Right, yeah.
And we're making a change. And hoping to reach our target while we're making a change.
No, we're not.
You're not
we're not
making
making a change this year. Not at all. Not at all.
No, but still, the competition maybe indicates
Require
a need
us,
to make a change.
right? Because currently our K to 5 math curriculum isn't even slated to be reviewed for another year, which means it wouldn't be purchased for another 2 years. So what we're saying
So
is
should
if
we
we make
bump
a
that up in the
change,
cycle?
perhaps next year they start to look at what that change could be for the following year to begin the implementation.
I mean, the statistics seem to be saying that, do they not?
Yes.
make a change.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's what
Yes,
she's saying,
that's
we're
what I'm
gonna bump it
saying.
up a year,
Right.
we're gonna do it sooner
Right.
than we were.
I know,
slated.
but if
It can only go so fast, right?
Right.
It's a
Correct,
2-year
right.
cycle.
But if I'm a
Right.
parent, doesn't that sound a little bit scary? That we're making a change? While
Well,
we're trying to
But
get-
it's based on,
Well,
but would you like
yes
to
and no.
see no change
No,
and
I'm not
say,
saying
well, our
that, but-
scores
Basically-
are, you know,
What you're saying is you're actually bumping up the study at looking at how we're supporting the curriculum that we're putting in place. We're already making changes in terms of aligning to the Common Core. We've been doing that for the last 2 or 3 years.
Right.
What we're talking about in terms of actually putting resources behind that is if we feel we don't have the materials or the textbooks to support what we feel is going to be best in terms of unit plans and daily lessons, now we're going to expedite that.
Okay.
There comes a point where we have to support the teachers in several levels, and one of them is understanding the math content and pedagogy behind it, right? That, regardless of what we
Yeah,
use
but
for
Mr. Thompson's
resources.
point is what Mr. Thompson makes sense, that we may have to look at that curriculum renewal timeline and change
Yes,
it.
yes, that's what
That's what that
these
sentence
notes
is.
are,
But in
correct.
theory, and I don't know that's likely, but we may find within that first year that we have the resources. I mean, it's probably not likely, but that's why you
Based on what's going
study
on in
that.
the field
Right.
now and the feedback we're receiving, there comes a point where if you're supplementing your core resource more than you should,
utilizing it.
then your core
Right, then
resource
it's
may
time,
need to change. Or your core resources may
Right.
need to change.
well, it's
And-
the trickle down. If you've done the higher grades, you have to bump
At some
up
point,
those
yeah.
lower grades
Right,
before
right.
it falls too far behind.
Yep.
And then that 7-point jump is, like, if you don't make the 7 this year, it's
Yeah.
not an additional 7 the next year.
Right.
So it's either like, you're looking at it as 7 points in 1 year.
Right.
It might really just be 11 points over 3 years for that
Right, but
2017.
You have to look at what your
That
2000
your
is
whole
going to move
target.
again a year from now.
Right.
Right.
It's going to move, but it's not going to go another 7.
Our
No, I
targets are
understand that, but it's
moving
gonna keep
roughly
moving.
But the gap still
2.3
stays
points.
wide.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got a wide gap here.
The gap could widen. If theoretically,
If
the
we go
gap.
down, yeah.
Right,
If we-
Right.
yeah.
or we stay the same.
Or we stay the same.
Yes, I'm just saying.
Right, right.
Even if we don't go 7.
not gonna be a
if you go up
14-point
4,
jump.
Right,
Right, you're still
Right.
making the
You're
gap
catching
shorter,
up.
right?
right, okay.
So, in theory, these are all new students now receiving a warning or failing. Potentially, some of them have gone up, some of them have come down. So, does this trigger anything for these new students who now have achieved a warning or failing? Does this automatically trigger something? It does?
In some cases.
And something, yeah.
I started, I sent a letter home last week, not solely based on MCAS, but also based on STAR, where I'm offering 2 extra periods of an intensive math intervention twice a week at each grade level to identified students. But it's based on their STAR test that we took in the fall and just teacher observation after the first month of school.
So not.
The MCAS plays into it too, and then when we get into the spring, we'll offer the after-school MCAS that we offer every year. But I think since the STAR is even more recent data than MCAS was, I'd rather look at what are the standards they didn't do well on MCAS and STAR, and the interventions are focused on those standards twice a week. They're not missing their regular math class, though. They're going to be pulled out of a science or a social studies twice a week. And I did talk to the parents before doing that. It wasn't
Are we finding that STAR is correlating to MCAS?
That was one of the questions I had tonight.
If we use
Those are some,
STAR?
if you guys looked at that kind of
No,
correlation yet.
no.
It seems to be
So it's
low
like
for
you're-
ELA, and it seems to over-exaggerate your performance in math.
So,
So kids are doing better in the math on STAR,
so,
even for the same standards.
Yes.
but what does that mean? What is it telling us?
Well, one thing that STAR does do, provide a service for our students and for the teachers is, like you said, does it trigger something immediately? So Mrs. Santinello obviously, sent a letter home based on STAR assessment data. Potentially they use some MCAS assessment data. And then at Maple Shade as well, we just had a fourth grade common planning meeting to look at the MCAS standards, the warning and failing students, and then we are providing 3 30-minute intervention blocks built into the curriculum a week strictly for mathematics, because it triggers something immediately.
For the whole class or for
Yeah, so intervention enrichment. So it's intervention for the students that need it, enrichment for the students that have some accelerated
So you're doing the whole
opportunities. We do a whole class.
You're differentiating based on where the
I
student is.
understand.
You're right.
There's
So-
two different-
Yeah, and so the STAR helps us as a universal screening measure in the beginning of the year to trigger that type of work. And so we can have a meeting and how we do it and what we use to see to every single student that also took the STAR assessment. It's different because MCAS is a strict criteria reference assessment. There's a criteria you have to meet. You either master that criteria or you don't. Whereas STAR is based on a norm of students that take that assessment. So it's two totally different assessments that serve two totally different purposes. For the purposes of keeping ourselves on track with MCAS, that we're particularly excited about or working toward is, rather than when we've identified gaps in curriculum or standards that aren't generally being mastered at a given grade level, rather than wait until May to figure out whether or not our students are on track, we're starting to create common assessments that happen at 3 common assessment periods during the course of the year. So we had curriculum writers that developed a math common assessment for the district. We have already looked at the standards that are going to be assessed in November, how that's compared to the standards on the MCAS assessment that we just took, to see if there are gaps in our learning, to know that we need to meet that by the November benchmark. And then we can look at November to say, are we on track, and can we use this as a good predictable measure for how well we're going to do on MCAS, rather than looking at STAR and knowing it's not transferable.
Right.
Right.
So the common assessments are more transferable.
Yeah, that's like the big work we're doing as a district, now that that we particularly feel will keep us on track in a more rigorous way.
And then when we go to Park, we can still use the common assessment.
Yes.
Correct, because
They're aligned to the
they're
Yes.
common core standard aligned.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are
An
other
easy way-
districts creating common assessments? They must be. And so
Yeah.
why are we spending our
Either they
time
have or
doing
they
our-
already have it done, and
Okay.
or they've been doing it for years. So yeah, it is a best practice
Every district
for
creates their
driving
own
instruction
common-
that's
Well,
standards-based.
not every district. Some districts, yeah. I mean,
Some are doing it, for
some
sure.
districts are going out and they're purchasing
Right.
assessments that are already packaged together and going that direction. We feel that this is something that actually came out of the work that we started to do around open response questions 3 years ago. And it's connected and it makes sense for our students. And so that's the direction we've gone or continue to travel in.
Now, have you collaborated with other districts, other school districts to help with these assessments? or
Yeah,
come up
last
with-
year we had some opportunity the year before to get together, and that was how we initially got around the table with this. We had it in the plans to begin with, because it's just a good practice, whether or not the whole state was doing it or not, but there were pockets of people doing it anyway, because if you're going to have this rigorous standards-based instruction, you should be assessing where you are with that and then tweaking it as you need so you can meet the needs. So a few years ago, we met, the LPVC ran some meetings where we got in the room, particularly around math, and we brought teachers from East Long Meadow. We're in the room, Hampton Wilbraham was there, Long Meadow was there, and we tried to kind of stumble across what would make a good assessment, the design of it, what type of questions would you have, and what we found is that while it was great to collaborate and hear what people were doing, everyone's curriculum is slightly different, and the assessment really should align with your curriculum and assess, up to that point what you've taught. And not everyone taught in the same sequence, and so it became difficult. So we came up with procedures of what should go into that, and then we kind of went on their own. A couple of districts may have worked together because they use similar curriculum resources, So, but it was very helpful in the thinking around it. Just Michael had a very eloquent kind of explanation for you of STAR versus the Common Core, and just to kind of summarize it would be that STAR sets a purpose. You heard Universal Screener. It's to give us quick data for the students who require intervention. That's what it tells us. What skills are they requiring further direct instruction with? Whereas the Common Assessment is the core content on a whole. How are all of our students doing with meeting the standards, and can give us feedback on, okay, what needs to change in the curriculum? Do I have to put more time into certain units, teach these standards a different way? And that's for the whole. So both give you a good balance when you're trying to provide, high-quality instruction for the students.
Has the Common Core's been a good predictor of results of MCAS?
The Common Assessments? Well, that's what we're hoping.
We're still developing. It's year one.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to look at that.
We hope so. Yeah, we really hope so.
That's the goal.
It's a good assessment, though. I mean, we reviewed the assessment, looked at the assessment.
They worked really hard.
The math assessment's a good assessment.
Yeah.
And one of the best things about it is that you're bringing colleagues together to develop it and look at what are the priority standards, where are we going to be at that first benchmark assessment, and then they agree on that, and then that aligns their teaching so that all students are getting a similar type instruction and path to that assessment.
It's just so important to know what we need to do in November than wait until March. It's just so important.
Kind of stepping back to looking at the curriculum that we're teaching for math. As you go through that process, if the system decides to make a change and that type of thing, will you be reaching out to other districts to see, especially the ones that are maybe having better success?
We reach out to them all the time. So we meet with we have 10 meetings with the LPVC annually regarding curriculum. The curriculum directors and assistant soups come together once a month and discuss, everything that has to do with curriculum. And math is always on the table. Several districts just implemented new curriculum starting last year. It's not a panacea, though. I mean, particularly with the type of math the Common Core needs us to be teaching, we really have to provide another level of support for teachers, which is to get them some professional development in the pedagogy and just the math content itself. Particularly K-5 is being asked to teach much more rigorous math than they have in the past, which means that your teacher development programs are kind of trying to pick up with that as well. So teachers that are currently out took 2 classes in math, or you took your what they called methods in math teaching, but you didn't technically have really strong content in instruction in math. So we probably have to add that level of support for teachers as well. So it'll take a few years. A few of our neighboring districts have implemented in 1 year, and you're not going to see like a magic bullet in 1 year. You may see dips, which is quite common to see a dip in the first year of implementing a new program, or even the first 2. And then you see, once they're familiar with it and become more proficient at administering it, then you'll see improvements.
And math coaches could help us.
And math coaches could get you that content PD. Yes.
Right.
Because it would be embedded.
I can see you say math what?
Coaches.
Yeah, I don't think one person's going to make a difference, but I understand.
Actually, one thing I'd like to say is that I think that we're on the right track here too, because from my perspective, we've moved really well into how do you, like, at least math, for example, is what, you were talking about how in open response questions, you have A and then through D, and A usually leads into B, which leads into C and leads into D. And it's all about, do you understand the concept versus do you just know how to, do the formula and then plug and play and put it in. And I think we've done a really good job so far this year, and I think last year, and I think I noticed it really when I went to high school, is that the teacher really put an emphasis on, do you understand the concepts and drilling the concepts into your head versus just how to plug and play and throw equations together. So I think I think we're definitely on the right track, at least from my perspective. You know, we've definitely gotten away from, okay, 2 + 2 = 4. Okay, but what does that actually mean? And how do you apply that? I think we've done a really great job with that. So that's just, from my perspective, I think we're definitely on the right track.
Good point. Good point. Thank you.
I think we
I
covered
think we've
that.
covered most of the
Yeah.
next
Yep.
steps to the questions.
I think we covered that too.
Yeah.
And to end on Jack's eloquent point, I think that's the best way to end. Any final questions or comments?
Well, I do want to say, it does sound like everyone has been doing a lot of work in the curriculum writing and really trying to make it happen. And it's hard because the results take a while to see. It's not as instant as we're hoping. And I don't want to discredit anyone saying no one's doing any work, because it really, there is work being done.
Yeah, we're
And it's
blessed to
not-
have teachers that step up to the plate to do that, because it's coming from our teachers,
Right.
which is why it's more valuable and maybe why you're seeing an improvement, because
Right.
they're, you know, that's who you want writing your curriculum.
Right. And it's also given me a greater appreciation for the open response and the focus on it and the changes that we'll be seeing in these future exams.
Does the CPI, that's our level, that's how we get each
The
school is
targets.
leveled. So the high schools are level 1, all the other schools are level 2. It's based on CPI?
Based on you hitting your targets.
Yeah. So what happens if we don't meet the target in consecutive years? Our level will change?
You actually have to score in the lowest, to move to level 3, I think I'm correct, in the lowest 30 or 20%.
It's not just CPI target, it's student growth
Right, it's
percentage
the
target.
There's a number
It's
of
more than
targets.
one
Formula.
factor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You'd have to be in the lowest 20 usually. You're compared to this, that's where you want to be.
That's where, you're compared across the state,
You're
like,
in the lowest
like grade levels.
28%.
If you're scoring the lowest 20%,
Level
then
3.
then your level, will drop.
And the only way to get to a level 1 is you meet the target consistently?
Consistently meeting the target. Right.
Do we know how many districts are level 1? Are there any level 1 districts in the state?
Entire
There-
districts, not just schools.
There are level 1 districts,
Yeah.
there are more level 1 schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's
Because
only
all it takes is
20%.
one school in that
20%
district.
of the
One
level
school
3 then,
can
right?
can knock you up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Suppose if you're a 1-school district.
Are there any of those?
There is a few.
Yeah.
There are a few.
What's happened to one school district?
Huh?
It's a one
High school.
high school. No, but there are still really small districts. where you have-
Who's the matchup? Hit point
They're
to that.
probably regionals.
Power.
And then they may feed into a regional
Yeah,
high
they'll
school.
feed into a regional,
Yeah,
but they're out
But they
there.
maintain
moving
their,
up to the hill towns.
yeah.
I would say that.
Yeah.
Mr. Smith, is this statistic available? The class that did so well at grade 10 at the high school was a class, what, 2016?
Class, you're talking about the 10th graders last year?
10th graders last year took the test.
Yeah.
The class of 2016. Can you show us a statistic report where they were in the 3rd grade, right through to grade 10?
Wow.
Yeah, we do
Yeah,
do that.
we can break that down.
You
Yeah.
can? Okay.
Yeah.
Because they're pretty bright, not that I'm undercutting your class. But I hear that they're pretty bright class.
Wait,
Wait, where were your kids?
Where were your
Wait, we're talking about 10th grade now or 10th grade?
No, I'm saying in
11th grade
general.
now?
I remember teachers saying back when they were kindergartners, oh my God, oh my God.
We gotta be careful not
What are we
to,
gonna
like,
do with these
pinpoint.
kids? if
Right.
they were
Yeah.
present?
Right.
Yeah, that could be dangerous.
Look at
Right.
trends over time, I think that gives you.
Right.
And
It wasn't
we've
a
actually-
transition year, no, it was probably something more established.
Kids that graduated last, couple grades.
And we've taken a look at that cohort look
Yeah, okay.
in past presentations. We can certainly provide that. One of the things that has always struck me is that you're seeing, similar to some of the charts that you saw up here, you're seeing students who continue to achieve at a higher rate as they go through the district. But there are, and you saw this last year and people pointed it out, there are transition grades where all of a sudden, our advanced and proficient drops off from one year to the next. And that's something that we're looking at, but it's something that also happens at the state level.
I think these kids too, I don't know if they had the same curriculum for math going all the way through.
Yeah.
They weren't the same math, like if you're using that, and I don't know about English language, but I'm just saying the curriculums would be different as they went through too.
Right.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of
Which would cause
variables.
it-
There's an
Right,
awful
that's what
lot
I'm
of
saying, what's
variables.
been consistent
Yeah.
and what hasn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because things have
These
changed.
charts are relatively easy to get.
All right, any other comments or
Just wanted, we
a final?
change the subject? Yeah, just.
Absolutely.
I noticed our next school committee meeting is October 20th. Dr. Flanagan, did you get the schedule for NEASC? Next time we're going to meet is October 20th.
It's coming out, I'll get it to you tomorrow, we're just
Okay.
finalizing it, but it's pretty similar to the one we gave you last time we were here.
Okay, so
Hasn't changed that
we're on at
much.
some point on Sunday.
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock
Yeah.
on Sunday?
is when you're on.
Not this, right? Not this Sunday.
Yeah. Not this Sunday, no, 19th.
19th.
And I've been reading.
Yeah, I'm reading, I've
Studying
been reading
up.
too.
What's our mission statement?
ELHS.
Yeah, that was real hard.
An honor, strive.
Yeah, we figured that out.
Come on, you gotta do better than that.
Well, have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
for being
you.
here.
Thank you.
You got more to turn off, right, before you leave?
All right.
Seconds to file out.
If that's information you want, and you want us to just provide it in mailboxes, we can.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I'd like to
Yeah, I'd
see
like
that
to see
kind of
it.
information.
I would
Sure.
too.
Okay.
Last year to this year.
Now, in this, and when we see them comparing, like, was it last year, was the first year we saw where they actually started comparing?
Following through the grade.
Following through the
We've done that the last 2
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was
That's
expecting.
what I was asking.
Right.
Will that
yeah.
come later, or is it just?
No, we
saying-
actually, we shifted the focus because the last 3 years, we've really focused in on this, and one of the points that we feel we needed to bring to the school committee was, okay, how is all this work actually panning out? And so we wanted to bring that, but certainly we started that direction, and then as we started to do further analysis with the leadership team, they said, you know, we're concentrating a heck of a lot of time on building the common assessments and making sure our students understand the concepts so that they can answer these multiple part questions. We'd like to be able to see how are we doing with that. And so that's where our analysis, that's the direction our analysis went, which will actually be more meaningful for the teachers.
Right.
Because it's going to break down not only how they've done with the work over the last few years, then from that, we also start looking at the standards. We start breaking down the item analysis. So they, as a leadership team, we started to get into where are we seeing standards that challenged us last year and are continuing to challenge us at certain grade levels again this year. And so that's getting into the conversation of the development of our common assessments. You know, if those are standards that we need to do a better job in terms of developing units, and that's actually what we need to do, and that's where all your work, you're sort of back mapping from your common assessment. Here's where they need to be. What should the prep work and the work leading up to it look like?
Okay. Just
So I mean,
different from what we've seen in
we
the
can
last
get some of
couple of
those, we can certainly produce those charts, and I can put them in your
I
mailboxes.
guess they just from
and-
like a layperson standpoint, you like to see a class go from, okay, you did this well overall,
Right.
now you've done this well, and it's kind of like, okay, so they, sort of like what you've said, we see a progression.
Sure.
A short-term progression, but at least, you know, maybe just 3 years.
Right.
But you can say, well, all right, maybe we didn't do what the state wanted us to, but we can see the children are themselves improving
Right.
year to
Right.
year, and that, you know.
Sure. All right.
I'm
Well,
just
we
thinking,
can-
I was just
we'll-
wondering why I hadn't, if it's a different meeting, but.
We actually did start there, and then the analysis took us that other direction. So maybe this is what we should be reporting out on, you know, because that's actually the work we've been doing and focusing on. So,
Yeah.
but we certainly can pull those charts together and provide them to you.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be
Yeah,
great.
it would be
Just
good.
for something to review, to,
Yeah.
you know, compare to this, because this was good, but it's not, you know.
Right.
There's two sides to it, and that's the other side, that's all.
Sure.
Right, the other part.
Yeah, Dr. Allen brought up the other side, that don't look at that, my school did improve.
Right,
Right,
exactly,
right.
right, we're not
Did improve,
seeing,
But we
Right.
can see that.
Yeah.
Right.
right, the individual schools. All right, so we can move on from that and go on to old business, which is 6.1, discussion of legal services.
I move that we finalize our legal services contract for the next school year.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, do I need to
No.
say, okay, so all the, Greg, you look like you were going to say something.
No, just in terms of specifying the term of the
Yeah.
contract, do we want to state that, or we already did in executive? Is that what? The
As
1
stated
year.
in
The
executive.
1 year.
The 1 year.
Yeah, 1-year contract.
Yeah. I said for the.
You said next school year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, I didn't think we had a term at all,
This
that's
school
fine.
year. Okay.
Okay.
Do we need to take a,
No, it doesn't have to be roll call.
oh, no roll
Regular-
call?
no,
Okay,
regular
so,
vote.
so we'll take a vote on that. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, hearing none, that carries forward, 5-0.
Okay.
All right. So moving on to new business, we have 7.1, high school field trip to Puerto Rico.
Okay, in your packet, you have actually 2 trips coming up under new business, but these would, although they're very detailed, this is your preliminary notice of trips that would be going out over April vacation. And the first one is to Puerto Rico, and the person who's heading this trip is Ms. Norton, and then she breaks out the itinerary and standards over the next 2 pages. What she will have to come back to the committee with is a final list of students and chaperones. Because at the moment, I think we just have Ms. Norton. Well, that actually might be the total chaperones, depending on how large a trip it becomes. You have Ms. Norton, you have Ms. Tangrady, and Mr. Eckstein.
And this is clearly during April vacation, so no school time is being missed.
Right.
That's
Actually leaving on the Saturday. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Right.
Have they done this trip before?
I think that
I know Ms. Norton's done trips before, but I don't know
she's
if
done
that's
trips
Yeah.
before, yeah.
They
I
went
don't
to
know
Costa
that-
Rica
So
last
Puerto-
year.
oh, they-
Costa-
oh, okay, so
Mr.
instead of
Eckstein
Costa Rica.
and
Mr. Eckstein went to Costa Rica last
Ms.
year.
Rainier
Yes.
went to Costa
Right.
Rica, right.
All right, so,
I move that we approve the high school field trip to Puerto Rico pending the next
Finalists of students and
for
chaperones.
finalists of students and chaperones.
okay, motion's made
A second.
and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, that carries forward, 5-0. Okay, and then we have the second trip to London.
Okay, and this is a trip actually prior to our new procedures that I think has gone out, and this is Mr. Bale putting it together, and he's broken out the trip for you and the costs, as well as their itinerary, day 1 through day 8.
You don't miss 2 days of school, huh?
Yeah.
They do on this trip, which I believe, actually, one of the trips we missed either that final Friday or
In the past,
part of
we've
Thursday.
yeah, in the past we've had that.
Yeah, we have had, we've crossed
Yeah,
that before.
and it's the half day and then Friday.
Right,
He hasn't named any other chaperones, so that'll be pending the next meeting, correct?
right.
Well, they don't have a full list of.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they need
Students.
list of students.
Okay, so someone like to make a motion?
I move to approve the high school trip to London, England, pending the next step of list of students and chaperones.
Okay, motion made,
Second?
seconded by Rich. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, that carries forward 5-0. Okay,
Thank you.
and with that, we're nearing the end of our meeting. We want to say, Jack, thank you
Yes,
for
yes,
being here and
appreciate it.
giving us your feedback tonight. That was very helpful. And for that, I just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, motion made. Somebody, I guess Rich and Bill, is that my, or Greg and Bill? Is
Yep.
that-
Yep.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Doesn't, I'm sorry, everyone's getting me thrown off. And that carries forward 5-0. And with that, have a great evening.